Ben Davis, nuclear physicist turned college professor turned computer programmer that now likes to come to cons and drink scotch.
For the scotch or for the cons? Or both? Okay. My name is Stephen Euin Cobb. I do a weekly podcast about the future in which I interview people for their opinion about the future. I've been doing it for about 8.5 years, and I've interviewed roughly a little over 300 people for their opinion about the future. It's called The Future and You. And transhumanism is a recurring topic on the show. And before I ask you guys the first question, I would like everybody to give their opinion about what transhumanism is, or how you define it. But I'm going to go ahead and give not so much mine, but the one that's of the people that I interview who are transhumanists, their notion, and that is it is a international. They love the word international philosophy concerning the augmenting of people and enhancing of people, and that the classic definition of it is the time period. Transhumanist time period is the time period between now and the period where we will become post-human. That is to say, not human. Either we're fully artificial, or we're fully digital, or for whatever reason, we are obviously not human beings anymore. And having said that, if you guys would, James, maybe you will just start down the line, give your own impression of what is transhumanism, what it means to you, perhaps.
Okay, so obviously you break it down as transitional human, and so I think that the definition you gave is pretty effective. I think on a practical level, it is technologically assisted humanity, and even if the technology is not mechanical in nature, it could be a chemical, it could be a drug that makes you smarter or something. But still, somehow that our existing technology and knowledge of genetics can be used to alleviate many of the shortcomings of being human, and make us smarter, stronger, healthier, and closer to immortal.
We can rebuild.
I agree with that. I've also seen some discussion that perhaps it's already started in ways that we don't really think about. We have assistants that are not incorporated into our bodies, but we have things like cell phones. We have better medical care than has historically been the case. There are a number of things that have at least started us in the direction.
Cochlear implants.
Yeah.
Things like that. Ben?
Okay, I'll be the curmudgeon. One of the panels that I have, or one of the presentations that I've offered to give at several cons is called "Where's My Flying Car, Damn It?" And it's based on the old wasn't Steely Dan, but it was the guy that was in Steely Dan, IGY, sings about the wheel in the sky, and by 76 we'll all be A-OK, what a beautiful world to be, what a glorious time to be free. Back in the 50s, people made all sorts of predictions, and basically none of them came true. So it's really, really hard to look into the future and know where we're going with things. And now you've got, seems like more lawyers, way more lawyers than you've got scientists. And people get afraid really, really easily. So I'm not sure when we'll ever hit this transhumanist phase. And I'm not sure what kind of catalyst it's going to take to make it happen. But I don't know that we're going to see it in our lifetime either.
Well, the transhumanists that I've interviewed, some of them anticipate it soon, really soon, like in a decade or two. And others, they expect it'll take a century or two, or maybe 1,000 years. Some of them are very eager for it, and so I think they kind of stretch reality a little bit in their mind of how quickly it can occur.
And it could be that it's already happening, but because it's happening in such incremental steps, that we don't appreciate the magnitude of just what it is that we're doing. You brought up the mention of the flying car, except for the fact that the cars we travel in have 4 tiny points of contact with the road. They're traveling along at 6 inches above the ground, at speeds that were unimaginable a century ago, at fuel costs that are, just again, miraculous by the standards of a century ago. And, you know, we take it for granted that, you know, I can get here from 200 miles away in about 3 hours, you know, just by pressing my foot onto a little pedal and moving my hands a little bit. You know, so last weekend, Cheryl and I did, over the Memorial Day weekend, we did a 100-mile bike ride. And 100 miles happens to be my current commute. I have to go drive 50 miles in the morning and drive 50 miles back. In the morning, I'm going in really early, there's no traffic. I cover that 50 miles in like 45 minutes on the interstate. And it took us 3 days to do 100 miles. And it really sort of puts into perspective that we have some amazing powers of travel that our ancestors could not have anticipated.
The thing I always think about in that regard, the average per day distance covered in a covered wagon was 8 miles.
Ox or horses? Sorry, ignore that question.
Okay.
I didn't mean to say it.
So, yes.
My next thing is, I'm curious, have you guys written, I know, Ben, you don't write fiction, but have you guys written any transhumanist examples in fiction?
No, but I probably will.
Okay. James?
Yes, I have a superhero in my Burn Baby Burn novel called App. And he was, in the previous novel, there's a supervillain who had a space machine that let him move around in space. It's something like teleportation that wasn't quite teleportation. It's more of a warp. Before that, he had built a teleportation belt, but he was smart enough not to put it on himself and turn it on and break himself into a zillion atoms. So he kidnapped this homeless kid off the streets of San Francisco, put the belt in, turned the dials, and the kid dematerialized. And that was the last he saw him for 15 years until the villain was beaten. The government went in and got all of the guy's tech, and they found the teleportation belt controls, and they figured out how to bring the kid back. But the kid can only stay in material as long as the belt is materializing him. But now the belt can be hacked. The programming of the belt can be hacked. And so he's constantly got a little text program going in his head, and he'll text onto this community of hackers and say, okay, I need to be invulnerable. Can someone write me a code that can rearrange my atoms to make me invulnerable? Or to fly, they come up with an airhead where he inflates his scalp with hydrogen gas and can float up.
It's not a fast flight then.
No, not a fast flight, but if you're being dropped out of an airplane, then you need to.
Not a good thing to go. Hydrogen is not a good choice if he's going into a combat situation.
But it's hard for a body to generate helium.
Okay.
So he kind of has to work with what he has.
Oh, okay.
So some of my favorite parts of that novel are him needing you know, superpowers on the fly, and the hackers all coming up with different ways that they could hack a human body to generate you know, power that he might need. And then at one point he has like a secret folder of powers that he's kind of keeping to himself, and like one of his handlers finds out about it, and he's like, I don't even want to know what this swinging pipe program does.
In one of my novels, Plague at Red Hook, there's an augmentation that was unanticipated by the people in the story, and because it had been actually engineered by aliens that lived on the planet before they were exploring it. And there are microscopic robots that get on the people without their knowledge, and begin replacing their cells with artificial cells. And over the period of several hours, they replaced all their cells with artificial cells that were mimicking their normal living cells. So they had become completely artificial and didn't know it. In the story, of course, there's always got to be a problem, and so since these were alien-made nanorobots, they didn't know that human beings sleep and, you know, go through different phases of cycles and stuff in their lives. And so the people that were asleep remained asleep for 16 days, and everybody was trying to, you know, frantic, trying to figure out what's going on. There was some other people that had, you know, they were in different emotional states and were stuck in those. So, you know, for the story element. I don't anticipate anytime soon that we'll be able to make microscopic robots that'll replace all of our cells and make us completely artificial and therefore basically immortal, since you can simply replace any cells that get damaged. But it would be maybe sort of an endpoint, a theoretical endpoint. Something more possible in the near term. Ray Kurzweil is a famous author of transhumanist stuff. And he proposed the concept of having in your blood tiny little, I forget what he called them, but they would be floating around your blood, and they were, instead of relying on your hemoglobin to carry oxygen in your blood, they would be like these little, you might say little pressure tanks that were designed nanorobotically to accumulate oxygen. Well, the hemoglobin is very inefficient overall for carrying oxygen in the blood, and so these would be much more efficient because they were designed for that by engineers rather than nature. And so, being smaller even than the red blood cells, and fewer in your body than the red blood cells, they would be able to carry thousands of times more oxygen than your hemoglobin is able to carry. So that if you had been breathing normally, you could then hold your breath probably somewhere around 45 minutes without needing to take another breath, which would be great for scuba diving. And so that was one of his proposals. Not that it was a serious proposal, this is what we should do, but this is an option that we would have. And he put forth many different options. What are some of the augmentations you guys have thought of or heard about that might be interesting? Ben, is there, I know you're kind of a skeptic, but still, you hear about the different stuff. What are some of the augmentations that you find interesting?
Well, in the same
Or
vein,
laughable.
in the same vein, it'd be great to be like Wolverine, you know, and just stitch yourself right up whenever you get cut or something like that. That'd be pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It hurts every time they come out.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need the knives. I'm not into violence, but you know.
But rapid healing would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I like to go rock climbing, so yeah, it'd be kind of cool to think if I actually hit the deck once, you know.
There was a TV series called Painkiller Jane. That was, she had the unlimited regeneration also. No claws, but she did have the unlimited regeneration. And the series was interesting to see how many things she could do with it. You know.
I don't remember that show.
Well, you know, I found it on DVD form back in the days when there were whole entire stores devoted to renting DVDs.
Do you have a question or comment?
No.
Two things. One, I have seen the opposite side of it. There was this animated show called Volcano, where some people became immortal, but then like some of the immortals were like sealed in bells full of water and stuff, and you know they would be over 20 years.
Wow, that sounds intriguing.
Yeah, and you know some of them went crazy because they got these situations. But
Paula, you have one?
Something like what he said. This is not something I would like to see happen, but the Jimmy Casey stories that Elizabeth Bear writes, the main character has been an augmented soldier in the past, and she has retired from the military, and her new parts don't work so well anymore. This gets corrected, but it's a problem. What I think about personally is mental acuity, instant saving whatever I've read. That would be wonderful. That kind of augmentation would be good.
Interestingly enough, this is a study that happened just this week. They reported on it. So there have been more photographs taken, like in the last 5 years, than up to that point before the initial camera. Yeah. So now, photography is just going through this huge explosion, and it's now ubiquitous. But they did some research where they sent 2 groups of students to a museum and told them to examine 8 works of art. One group was told, make sure you take lots of pictures. The other group was told, photography's not allowed, you can't take any pictures. The group that went in and took pictures, when they tested the students like a week later on the details of the art they looked at, the group that took pictures had like no memory of what they had seen. Even though they had examined it to take the pictures, it's like once their brain knew the picture had been taken, they didn't need to remember the artwork anymore. Whereas the group that had been forbidden to use cameras, had a good recall for the details being tested. And it seems to be that people who are relying on the camera to kind of there are 2 theories. Either A, you don't feel like you need to remember it because you've got it documented, or B, you're not remembering it because you're not experiencing the art, you're experiencing photographing the art. And so you're not really interacting, you've placed yourself at a level removed from reality.
When I was in high school, I was in the physics class. It was the not math physics, the heavy math. Our physics teacher wanted to have calculators in the classroom, and you could be expelled back then. This was the 70s. You could be expelled for having a calculator in the school. Because they were still, pretty new. People weren't really accustomed to them. Banks had just started giving them away if you open a bank account. The prices had come down. Well, so my physics teacher went to the board and asked permission. And they said, well, you can put them in, you can have 4, but you have to buy them, and you have to bolt them to tables. And so he bought calculators, the larger size, not printing ones, but they were large size calculators, and bolted them to tables so that we could do calculations in the classroom. And of course nowadays you'd probably be expelled if you don't bring a calculator to school. Right?
In a similar vein, my co-students hated me in Physics 1 in college because I would go in every day with a cup of coffee, imagine that, look at me and see how it was, but put my feet up on the chair in front of me and I'd just listen. And everybody else in class was madly taking notes. And they're like, you don't even take notes, how is it that you can make A's on the test? It's like, well, I'm listening, and that's part of what I think we're hitting on here is it's more important to be engaged in what it is you're doing than to count on a machine helping you. Even if you've got one built in the back of your head or something, I think there's a real danger there.
Well, the board was worried that same thing that you were talking about with the photographs, that if the kids are relying on the machine, they're not going to memorize mathematics. But of course, he was going for the formulas. He wanted them to learn the formulas, not the little calculations of solving the formula.
Well, this is the same thing as when we started with reading, because then we didn't have to memorize the book.
There may have been people that were against it.
Same with the photograph. We didn't have to remember.
Actually, Socrates wrote him, well, he didn't write it because he couldn't read or write, but he dictated an essay on the subject that youth was going to lose the ability to memorize long, complex stories as the part that other people did, and around memory, they write it down. But, if I may, my sister threatened me with bodily harm if I didn't get enough pictures of her daughter being introduced to her grandmother. Excuse me, it's a little more complicated than that. We were in a Chinese village that my niece had lived in for a few weeks before she was adopted. We were meeting with her foster mother. My sister brought me all the way from America because she knew I could take 100 pictures a minute. She didn't know you could put it on automatic shutter. And I did that. I can't remember most of that village. My mother could. She described it to me. However, my mother has had a stroke. She doesn't even remember the trip. I have pictures of that entire village that I can go back and stir my memory with now.
So something is gained and something is lost.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I had to get that one.
Okay.
Oh, I just want to say, I want to wheel it back into transhumanism. Once we start being able to record things in our minds, and our minds also have internet access, do we worry that that connectivity comes with the price of what if those servers that our photos are stored on are accessed by hackers and they change our memories, or they change the memories that are in our brains?
Well, brains
Still
would become
His Wikipedia page changed,
Yeah.
and now he thinks he's handsome.
It's like, oh, you weren't in China, you were in Thailand. These pictures that you took show that you were there,
Well,
or something like that.
Anytime that something is put online or made access online, then yeah, it becomes hackable. So that there's new vulnerabilities. Although data storage is usually backed up, even especially on servers. So there's preventions, but there's still danger. Nothing is unhackable. Nothing can be completely, shielded from hacking. So the brain would become hackable. And I interviewed a computer programmer, and he was really against the idea of us being wired by our brains directly into the internet on the grounds that it makes us hackable and susceptible to that.
Well, we're hackable as it is. I
Yeah.
mean, there's
That's
the
true.
big lie.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody tells you a lie enough times, you start to believe it.
Yes.
Oh, yes, sir.
Well, I believe in what James was saying earlier about transhumanism and about how it happens in bits. Because if you think about it right now, artificial hearts are more efficient than regular ones. They have artificial legs that can actually move in a way that is more, it makes the person faster than the previous legs. They have artificial arms that are stronger than the ones they replaced. So in a way,
Yeah, all that's true. By the way, I imagine you're talking about the guy with the spring steel.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oscar Pistorius.
Yeah. There's a augmentation, what do they call it? A power suit? Something like that?
yeah, so,
I saw a video on YouTube about this thing. It's you wear it like a harness, and it's got legs so that it's like sort of attached to your legs, but it will bear its own weight as well as yours technically.
Right.
And this guy, they had 50-pound weights. I don't know if you saw this thing. 50-pound weights, and they had about 3 or 4 of them. And it had it's like you're wearing a robot. Yeah.
I saw a similar video where you had 80-pound nurses moving 300-pound men using.
Well, the one that I saw, the arm ended, the robotic arm that he was wearing was like mimicking, the directions of his body. There's little sensors, so wherever he moves his arm, it will follow him with, of course, more strength than he has. And it terminated with a hook rather than a hand. And so he hooked onto this 50-pound weight and he set it on the table. And then he set another one on the table. And he did them about that fast, and they had a team of people carrying them back around from the table and setting them down for him to pick up. And he picked up these things. He's just standing there, and he's not breaking a sweat because it's no effort for him. For him, it's like about an ounce worth of effort. And he's picking these 50-pound weights up over and over and over. He does this for like 2 or 3 minutes, and never breaks a sweat. It's kind of like a smaller, lighter, more flexible version of the power loader from the second Aliens movie. So, where hers is giant, bulky, and it's like a forklift or something, a robotic suit.
This was the first one.
This was the second one. Yeah. So that would definitely be an augmentation. It's not internal. It's something you'd put on and take off, just like a suit of clothes.
Well, artificial hearts are internal and they're more efficient.
Yeah, there are some models. The weak points of the artificial hearts are not how efficient they are. It's their power source. If it's got to be provided from outside, then you have a possibility of infection, wires going into you and stuff like that. There's a lot of engineering problems. They'll be overcome eventually, but we're still in the
I don't know if they are.
baby
I see
steps.
a small step, like
Yeah.
James was saying earlier.
Like, I don't know if an artificial heart can be designed to respond to the different demands of your heart.
They're working on that too.
Yeah.
They've actually already solved that problem. The problem are power, because the human heart it's a simple device. Efficiency is not the problem. It's that it's got to keep going all the time. It can't stop at all, ever, because then you die. And providing it with power constantly, reliably, without having to have wires go inside your body where you can get infection and junk on that. Those are the engineering problems they have to overcome.
Have you heard about bioprinters?
Yes. You want to talk about that?
Bio what?
Bioprinters.
Yeah, 3D printers that print in cells.
We were talking about that on our earlier panel. You guys want to cover that?
Well, I know, I mean, basically it's 3D printing and, where you just lay down a layer of cells. It could be very useful for healing a thin tissue, something. It gets a bit more complicated if you're trying to build an entire organ. But they do have where they will build the scaffolding, say, for a kidney, and then fill the kidney with stem cells that then fill in the proper gaps.
I heard about an ear that was reconstructed and added, simple things like that.
Well, there was the ear that was going on the back of a mouse.
Right.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Okay. If we achieve a point through transhumanistic technology or whatever, I use the word technology for broadness, so that we are no longer human, at what point do we lose our human soul? Or do we?
Well, the people that I've interviewed, they're not worried too much about souls. So let's get into those aspects, because I want to bring Ben and James in more.
No, that's the only important question. At what point do you lose? Do you no
At
longer
what-
have a
at
soul?
what
So
point
you
do you regain
so
them?
you cannot gain eternal life in heaven or hell.
Way to go, James, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, it's like at what point, what evidence is there that we have them?
Yes.
What, let's just say, what if we did, what would you think?
Well, there's the human spark. You have the curiosity. It's a little bit different from the soul. I think that we have a certain curiosity. We have a certain. The fact that we are mortal gives us a certain something in our lives that makes us do things with deliberation and awareness of absence. I'm sorry.
Urgency.
Urgency. Yes.
Living
At what
scenario.
point? At what point do we live longer and have many advantages, but lose that urgency, that curiosity, the passion, the spark that makes us human?
Well, actually, Jonathan Swift mentioned that in Gulliver's Travels. Are you familiar? One of the lesser adventures is when they meant I pronounce it Strudelbergers.
Don't know that.
One of it was only a couple of pages. He was in one of the places, he was living in this land where they could summon the ghosts of the past, and he could talk to great men. And another wonder was the Strudelbergers. These were people who were born with a certain birthmark and were naturally immortal. They never aged beyond adulthood. They never died. But most of them never actually did anything very productive. They just kind of sat around and did what they were told, the same as the rest of the human race. And out of self-defense, the other people had to make it illegal for them to invest for compound interest.
Some of the people that I have interviewed,
I am Roger Corby.
some of the people I've interviewed, they want to go completely, not just artificial in the sense of made out of artificial materials or mechanical or whatever materials. They want to be digital people. For example, in Second Life or other game worlds. Second Life, not so much a game world, it's a virtual reality, an artificial existence, a digital world. Some of them want to take on a completely digital existence, so they have no body at all. They exist, their mind exists simulated, you might say, in a computer. And that they would then not be mortal in the sense that they wouldn't die because they don't have a body that can die.
But they would already be dead because that would not be them. That would be it.
It depends on how they became digital.
So in my Bitterwood trilogy, I actually address this with kind of a soul thing, where I don't believe we currently have souls, but I think mechanically we could engineer a soul in the sense of something that could be transferred from body to body. So I have a character who uses a very advanced nanotechnology, and basically every cell of her body has a very, very tiny robot in it recording the state of that cell, recording the data of that cell. And then she has other people that she's infected with these nanites. And if her original body is ever killed, or destroyed, then the data that's been recorded on her original nanites can be transferred to the new body, and basically she can transfer her memories and intelligence from one body to another, making her immortal, even in the case of a traumatic. She's already at a stage where she can repair any natural aging or most, small damage, but, there's always a possibility that a giant, that you're going to be trapped in one of the drown tanks and you have to get out, and your old body's pretty much done for. You have to jump. And so basically I created a digital soul that she could use to possess other people.
One of the augmentations that many transhumanists want, almost universally, is augmented lifespan, which has both pluses and negatives. If you're the individual, then it's a big plus because you don't die. If you're a civilization, there can be negative consequences because so much of our civilization is based on the idea that people die after a time and make room for the next generation.
Yes.
And some people feel that we are obligated to make room for the next generation. Anybody want to tackle that one?
Well, before we move on that, what you were saying about the digital self, that was the entire thing behind all 2.5 seasons of Capita.
Ah, yes, that's true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I run a role-playing forum. It's a science fiction one, and we have it's a transhuman setting where there's brain uploading prevalent, and you might hear things like, it's been 2 hours since you died. You lost those 2 hours, but we have everything backed up from your last sync. Here's your new body. We noticed you had exceptional combat prowess. We wondered if you would give us permission to fork your mind and make other soldiers that have your mind as the basis. Once minds become digitalized, what do you think some of the issues are dealing with the identity and self once you can copy a mind?
Issues of ownership, issues of like someone duplicating your mind without your permission, obviously. A person might want to have digital children, so to speak, making more of themselves. More copies that they would, supposedly nurture them, I guess. I don't know. It brings up a lot of really weird possibilities and even paradoxical things. Yeah. But anyway, I forget my question earlier.
About
the ramifications. Ramifications about.
I think what we're eventually going to figure out as a species, having given this particular matter a lot of thought, is that it's really immature, and it's almost infantile of us to want to live forever. There's going to come a point. I mean, what do you need? 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years? There's going to come a point where you've seen everything you want to see. You've loved everybody you're ever going to love. And everything's just going to be a friggin' bore. And if you stay that long and you stay to that point, how many people have you cut out, so that you can take up your little bit of space for the last 1,000 years? So I think one of the things that we're going to realize is that at some point, even if you could back up somebody's brain software onto a hard drive and you could run it in a computer simulation or do any of that, eventually you're going to end up with this software that just doesn't do anything. It just sits there and gives this bored look at you. Like, what do you want me to do now?
There are challenges that a person with a 10,000-year lifespan could undertake that a person with a 100-year lifespan cannot undertake. So I happen to believe that there is no scheme for faster than light travel that is ever going to work. And so, you can look and say, well, with practical technologies, it might take us 1,000 years to reach the next habitable star. We don't actually know which will be the next habitable planet, but let's just say we find one that it's at a distance that would take us 1,000 years to travel there. Right now, that's just completely out of question. But if your lifespan was 10,000 years, it's like, oh, well, let's just pop over there.
But that's not us. That's somebody else. That's somebody with a different mental state and a different metabolism. that would be more than happy to sit on the starship.
It'd be, yes, a transcendent team, yes.
On the other hand, if we were artificial, then the moon's habitable, because we don't breathe. If we were completely artificial.
Right.
And also, if we were completely digital, there's no space requirements, because a server could hold 10 people, or it could hold 10 million people, if it had the electrical capacity, memory capacity, so that the population is not a problem. You're not really occupying the space of other people.
And you wouldn't need much of a ship if you weren't breathing. If pressure were not an issue, it could be a framework.
It would be interesting to see what would motivate us once we reach that digital state, though.
Yeah, another problem with being, or question of being digital is we all experience time at the current rate, because that's the way the chemistry of our brains operates. And there's a set speed, a limitation of data transferred in the mind is at about 100 feet per second, if I remember right, for neurons. Well, if you're completely digital, then you could theoretically speed that up or slow it down, whatever is most convenient for you, thinking 1,000 times faster and experiencing life much faster. We had 2 people with their hands up, but let me go with you first, Jim.
Okay. We've been talking a lot about copying people, but I kind of would think that a copy of a person is, if you have a copy, then you still have the original, which may die at some point. So I would think that in order for you, for lack of a better word, to continue existing, and it's you, it's not a copy of you, you have to at least retain the whatever part of your brain has your identity and your consciousness, yeah?
You run into
is
the
it
problem.
possible to continue, do you think it's possible to come up with something where we will eventually be able to eternally refresh that and replace the cells that need to be replaced without it basically killing you?
Well, you run into 2 problems. One of them you alluded to, and the other's a little different. The first one is the transporter problem. If you transport somebody and remake them over here and then kill them over here, this one thinks it's the same person because they have the same memories and stuff, but you killed this guy. And so, you run into the same problem with digital stuff. If you recreate an upload a mind, the original mind may still be in existence. Are they going to kill the guy? I mean, this guy thinks that he's this guy, but if there's now 2 of them, I mean, you run into some serious problems, and I don't have the answer on how to overcome them. Some people that want to be digital people, they envision that their mind over time becomes, you might say, augmented, so that more and more artificial elements are added to their brain, so their brain becomes less and less organic. And eventually the thing is completely artificial, so that their personality and their understanding and their experiences are still in there, but there's no organic brain. It's all, electromechanical. So that, well, just a minute. And that is, once they've reached that point, well, there's no reason for the artificial material that's running the personality that they believe is themselves for it to remain inside their head. It doesn't need the support of
I know there's people with questions, but what you have said about enhancing, one of the things that I'm really intrigued by is once Google Glass becomes more ubiquitous, I am terrible with faces and names. Just absolutely, I have met you 50 times before, and the odds of me remember who you are pretty low. It's just not in my brain pattern to do that. And yet I upload a picture on Facebook of 6 people that that happen to be in a picture, and suddenly it's like putting boxes around them all. And so I can easily see myself with Google Glass and facial recognition software going into a room and saying, "Oh, Bob, how you doing?" Yes, so she would agree it's something I need to do. And so I'm also doing SARPtalk, but the Google Glass could be prompting me with remember to mention his sick mother, and so it can prompt me with all that. You mentioned the power suit where you can move around. It could reach a point where I've died, and my corpse is in my power suit, and my voice augmentation is still reciting the scripts You know, walking around, shaking hands, how you doing? And, you know, at what point did I disappear? And, you know, and that's not like,
went to heaven or hell.
that's not 100-year technology. That's a scenario that could be happening 5 years from now, or, you know, I think all the elements are there if you had enough money and the programming capacity you put together, you could totally do it. Yes?
Well, there was a story on NPR about a guy that was, I can't remember what disease it was, but he recorded phrases that he said all the time because it must have been like Lou Gehrig's disease, so that he could say those phrases in his own voice, even though he couldn't voice them. But they were, you know, it was like 20 phrases that it was like a voice memory thing. So it was a thing.
Okay. First, what James was saying, you know, they covered that in Dr. Who's Science and Life with the, you know, the memory still there. Is it the real person? What you said, you know, to transport the whole thing, you know, they actually covered that in the next generation with Leica. It was split into which one's the original. And, you know, is the original dead? What Ben was saying, I completely agree with, you know, after a while, what's the point of living? You know, that was the whole focus of the movie. Well, the people had time on their arms, and then time literally became currency. And it's like, you know, how much is a year of war? You know, and after a while, you're gonna see everything. What's there to do? And then about the whole disease thing, there was a guy who has made a robotic version of his dead wife that supposedly responds the way she would have. Have you ever seen that?
No, that one I haven't seen.
Star Trek episode, the same idea.
But no, in real life, this guy took this doll and made it look like his wife, and he's programmed a personality into it. I suppose no one else has seen that video, but it's really creepy to me.
The farther we go along with this, the more, I don't know, the more people that are gonna be pissed off with it, the more questions that arise, the more paradoxical stuff, the more things that'll become obvious that we didn't think of, a lot of stuff that it's just gonna become confusing and annoying and scary, there'll be laws passed against stuff, it'll be a big mess, but it'll also have possibly many benefits.
Right,
Well, the benefits question. Okay. Some people will be able to afford the benefits either through, in a capitalist society holding money, or in other societies through having been, you know, the descendants of the gods and fill it in. Some people will have access to the benefits. There won't be enough to go around for everybody, at least not for the first few hundred years. So is this going to lead to revolution, or a middle class, or?
People starve every day. I mean, you know, we don't know about it in this country, but for the most part.
In the early days, computers were very expensive. They cost millions of dollars. Now they're giving grade school children who can't read yet. It's the way all technology works. It's expensive at first, and then it gets really cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, and then everybody and their brother's got it.
And with software, it seems like you hardly ever have to pay for anything now. You know, now they want to give away everything that they write. And, you know, I have many pieces of life-transforming software on my cell phone. You know, they're absolutely free. You know, in theory, I have an ad a quarter-inch tall that I have to put up with.
But the question is, do you want pop-up ads in your own brain?
You know, if they're as easy to ignore as the ones on my cell phone, and if I get some amazing benefit for free. So like right now, I use MyFitnessPal to track all the food I eat, and to, you know, kind of design my calorie stuff. I use some other programs to find out calorie counts on menus of restaurants I'm going to go to, so I can kind of pre-plan what I'm going to eat. I use Endomondo to track all my activities, so I know how many calories I'm burning. I could see, but right now I still have to pull out the phone and punch in numbers and look up information. But I can definitely see a lot of people wear the Fitbits that keep track of this. I can see a sensory feedback system to where I don't have to pull out my phone. My phone can be, or there could be like a code that I could learn, that it just gives a little vibration, and it's like, okay, well, I now know I've reached 1,000 calories for the day, and so I need to be, thinking, differently about the next thing I'm going to eat.
Everything is steps and steps, and we talked about Google Glass. They've already developed a contact lens version that will allow you to do similar things to Google Glass, which means people talk about, oh, they look silly or they look intrusive, and people don't. Well, if you have them in contact lenses, you could be videotaping a panel without even asking us permission to videotape
We
a panel.
will,
And
we
uploading
must
it live.
immediately pass a law requiring that Google Glass is not only obvious, but you must have it labeled Google Glass, so we'll know if that's what you're using.
I got a
The
kick.
thing you have to worry about is also driving, because that's gonna be distracting, and then if you get an accident.
Google is lobbying to
One
make,
eye and not the other?
yeah, Google
But
is
you won't be
lobbying.
driving by that point, your car will be driving.
Single-eyed people are not allowed to drive.
Google
They don't have
is
proper
lobbying
identification.
various state legislatures right now, trying to make sure that they don't make it illegal to use Google Glasses while you're driving. They're actually
Those will be
working on that.
outlawed shortly.
That's a whole lot of evil.
Well,
Evil,
because,
evil.
I mean, if you think about it, if the Google Glass can project a map, I mean, right now, I have a GPS
Oh, yeah, that's
system
true.
that I'm always looking down at. It'd be safer to have it as a heads
Well,
up.
Google's also working on cars that drive themselves, so I mean,
Yes.
one sort of leads to the other.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm an IT guy by trade, and I was thinking, you know what, if we can have a brain where we can install software programs, that would be really great for me. And then I started thinking about, right before I came to this con, I was fixing a woman's computer, and she had like 25 pieces of adware and junkware on there, and I was thinking, oh God, people are going to install crapware on their brain.
I'll give you a worse scary thing, and that is if we can upload knowledge like that, and skills like that, that means anybody in here can do
I
your
know
job.
Kung Fu, you know.
No, anybody in this room could do your job tomorrow by
Yeah.
uploading
Oh.
the knowledge of how to do
And-
it.
Because you gotta be able to process it.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. But that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about able to upload the knowledge.
But all this prepossesses that we understand the brain, and we don't. We were talking 30, 40 years ago about artificial intelligence. Oh yeah, we'd have computers as smart as people now.
Yeah.
No, it's turned out quite different, just like the flying car. Where's my phone? Where's
Yeah,
the flying car? Where's the artificial
We're still in a very primitive state of understanding of the brain.
Or what if you get a Trojan that only activates when you go to the voting booth?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Do we have that?
Well, interesting that you bring up voting, because I was going to insert two different aspects of paranoia. Talking about like implanting things in your arm, part of me is like, oh man, it's so convenient. But also, I'm wearing a GPS, and not just wearing one like I carry my phone around. I am literally GPS, government, Big Brother, what have you. My bodily functions, every time I need to use a restroom, the president can know.
And people will claim you have the option.
Which,
but you
obviously,
don't.
my life is not all that interesting.
They want to arrest you, it'll be a lot easier.
Yeah, but I mean, what would that do for even basic rights like free speech? I mean,
So I'm a libertarian, and I find it horrifying that the government would track you like that. On the other hand, if the government is agreed to foot the bill for your medical care, and why not have a sensor data, and they can say, gosh, or like right now, a lot of you will have cards in your wallet for when you go grocery shopping. You swipe the card to discount, and your grocery store knows your buying habits. Why can't the government say, we'd like to see this data, and if we're going to cover your health care costs, we want to make sure that you're buying the right ratio of broccoli and asparagus and not spending all your money every month on
Cigarettes.
moon pies and cigarettes.
Scotch.
What is this scotch you keep mentioning?
But, you know, so, and if you've already agreed, okay, you're going to pay the bill, you know, don't you give up some freedom from that? Because if someone is, you know, if they're footing the bill for your health, then they have certain responsibilities to monitor your health, it seems like, in order to keep their costs low, to make sure you're not doing certain primitive things. Right now, all of us travel around with GPS. Why waste money and effort sending patrol cars out onto the highway? You know, in theory, if you studied the data from your cell phone's location, they can figure out who's getting from point A to point B at 90 miles an hour and just not even bother sending a car out, you know, so you send you the ticket in the mail.
Email you the ticket.
Yeah, you'll go get
Because they have to.
Upload it to your Google
Why
Glass,
is it
and
illegal
then
to
swipe
drive
it right out of your bank account.
Exactly. They've got to get the car out there to stop you before you kill somebody else.
Well, a few fines, and I mean, once you know that you aren't getting away with it. So right now, you can do it
There
because you
have
know
been
that.
people who have had over 100 tickets and dozens of, and spent time in jail for drunk driving, and
That's
they
pretty
still
rare.
go out and drive drunk.
Well, yeah, that's true.
You would just have to know not to. I mean, once you have the Google self-driving cars, you know they're going to be a person to obey the speed limits. It just seems like, I mean, otherwise you would have companies being sued, you know, and so it seems like we will move into a future where disobeying the law and getting away with it will just become, you know, very difficult. And is that going to be for good or for bad?
It depends on whether the laws are good or bad.
Yes.
At that point.
Oh my God, we're doing
I think the government will need to loosen up.
Speaking of doomed, I don't know what time I got.
Speaking
Five
of
minutes.
5 minutes.
Five? Oh, okay, well then, we talk about the danger and the problems of life extension. But there are so many people on this planet that don't want to die. And there's so much money that they're willing to pay. So there's so much of a buck to be made in life extension. We're going to get it. If it's if it can be done, it's going to happen. And so I really think we need to examine, not just now, but ongoing basis, what effects these are going to have, and how are we going to prepare for this? Because it might be 5 years from now, it might be 500 years from now. It's almost inevitable. Yes, sir?
Well, I was just going to
Quickly,
point out,
because we have a-
right, just a couple of your podcasts, you have asked humanists, no, what's the term we're talking about? Transhumanists, what they plan to do with the extra life. Have you noticed that they don't actually have any detailed plans or specific ideas?
And I asked them, what are they doing now
Yeah, now
to
if you were
prepare
going,
for it?
if you're gonna if you give it to Thomas Edison or Tesla or even Karl Marx, you're gonna come up with some remarkable stuff.
Yeah.
Marx just needed another 200 or 300 years in the London Museum, London Library, British Museum to fall by. But most of them are gonna be Swiss Studebergers, people who just don't do anything because they don't have.
Give a functional body to Stephen Hawking.
Yeah.
That would be, yeah, exactly.
Then he wouldn't get any work done, he'd be out playing.
So to
What are you
address,
gonna do in heaven for the next 20,000 years?
to address your concerns, I think
He
that
deserves a second life.
I'm kind of with Ben on, I think that as we solve one problem, a new problem will be revealed that will pretty much thwart our efforts towards immortality for quite some time. So already we have diseases among the aging that are, for the most part, new diseases to mankind. They just happen to emerge because we're no longer dying from other things that might have killed us. And we also find that as we mitigate certain things, so now we have the technology to travel great distances, and we have steel boxes to lift us upstairs, or moving walkways to staircases to carry us up. But as a result, many of us have atrophied leg muscles compared to what, what we could have. We have, we're far more feeble. So as we gain this technology, that will assist us in doing these things, we could wind up weaker and weaker, and, as
So we're
we,
moving toward
as we
the,
jump out of one frying pan, we jump into a big fire.
Actually, they've figured out what probably will be the first thing that we're going to run into with an extended lifetime. We know that kids and young adults react very quickly. And we know older people don't react as quickly. They have a slower reaction time. And originally they thought, oh, it's because the body's getting slower. No, it's actually the mind has so many more choices, it takes longer to process. So the older you get, the harder it will be to make fast choices.
So we'll turn into robot ants.
Right, so you're going to have problems processing the information within our heads.
I think that
Exactly.
ridiculous.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.